Welcome, everybody, to another podcast from the Evil Safety Dudes. My name is Aaron Icino, and I'm the Director of Risk Management for IBC. I have a special guest host today in the IBC podcast fort, Mr. Toby Tortorilla, and I bombed it.
Nice job. No, you did
it was
really
okay?
well. Yeah, Toby Tortorilla. Yes,
All right,
correct.
nice. And you work for SFM.
I do. Yep.
And tell me what you do there.
I'm a senior loss prevention representative.
Senior? So do you have infant loss? Is this
there
an
are
age
just
thing?
there.
Or it's not an age thing?
No, but there are loss prevention representatives, and then there's senior loss representatives, and then there's loss prevention specialists, which is a little bit higher than me. Yeah, you got to be a little older. You got to be like 90 years old to get that one. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And for those of you just tuning into the podcast for the first time, we're all things occupational health and safety here. We're all about how not to die at work. But we just don't talk about death. Sometimes we talk about money because safety and money are tied together. If every business owner understood the depth of their relationship between bottom line and safety, I think so many more people would be on board with safety. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, companies need to understand how just even the simple things like slip, trips, and falls can affect their bottom line. You know, so I'm here hopefully today to inform them how that can happen, you know,
Cool.
through their experience mods and things like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the weeds on this a little bit because it's cool to have another insurance evil safety dude on the podcast. And even so, you're in a different position than I am, even though we're both in the insurance as safety. You represent carriers.
Correct. Work comp carriers, monoline work comp carriers. What we are. So we just work on that. We don't walk into a place and we're not looking at liability of the building and all these other things.
Right.
We're kind of looking for the employees' health and safety.
Super specialized in that. So that's cool. And I'm doing the safety, loss prevention, risk management from the agency side. So even though we're both in the same trade, in the same field, there's differences. So it's cool to have a carrier person on because you got to I don't know if this happens with carrier safety folks, but do you get kind of like claim numbers, like amounts memorized? Like when you see like a potential for a wrist sprain, do you go, oh, that's a $50,000 claim? Like...
You know, I've seen a lot of, I don't look at averages a whole lot. I know my company has a lot of information on things like that. I basically look at it like, hey, you know, that slip, trip, fall, or that trip and fall because you have that problem in your parking lot may cost you $200,000 or $300,000.
Wow.
Okay, so, you know, surgeries are not cheap.
No.
That's why we talk about this topic every time I come into places.
Yeah. So I think that's cool, though. I mean, I wish sometimes I had more of that, you know, because if I could just throw around like an insane figure, I think people would listen to me more. Like, hey, man, you really should put a mat under that liquid area because on that liquid on the tile could cause a slip, and that could be
it could be $100,000 claim
right
there you're looking at.
Yeah, if I just had that number, because what I'm doing a lot is like, you know, that could be a, you know, serious OSHA violation for an injury if there's an investigation, and they could fine you this amount to this amount, and people are like, whatever, OSHA, they're not going to catch me. But, you know, to realize that there's claims too that affect them, and those claims could affect their premiums and getting jobs because of high EMR rates, and it's just a lot. It's not just about OSHA, is it?
No, it's not. And, you know, I've listened to some of the past podcasts, and I know that you guys, you know, train a lot on the OSHA topics, and you've talked about the trainings that they need and all that stuff. And while those things are really super important, and checking fire extinguishers and doing this and that in your facilities, you know, a lot of people miss the major loss sources, the things that are costing their company a lot of money. And while it's good to keep people safe in all aspects and be ready, have your readiness ready, that's one of the things that you just got to think about, those major loss sources.
And I think that's part of a strategy for safety compliance. Like, all right, what's going to kill people? All right, what's OSHA going to bust us on? Is that all we got to prioritize? No, we should look at major loss sources too.
Right.
You know, it should all be like because I do a lot of mock OSHA audits,
Mm-hmm.
safety audit. And I go, all right, if OSHA came in today, they could pay, if they saw what I saw, they could catch you on all these things. So we have a big list.
And here's your minimum fines, and here's your maximum fines, and repetitive fines.
They go, all right, Aaron, you found 38 things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How do we prioritize? But I like that prioritization. All right, let's go human health, life, and safety first. What's going to injure people, kill people? All right, what should we prioritize? Well, money. So you could prioritize biggest OSHA fines next, or biggest, premium increase causing
Potential.
things and
Mm-hmm.
loss. And those type of things really speak to business owners, and they logically go, that makes sense. Let's not kill anybody, and then let's not go broke.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So
for those of you wondering what today's topic on, it is on slips, trips, and falls. Sometimes I hear this topic called walking working surfaces as well. That's how OSHA calls it, one of their standards in the general industry, walking working surfaces. That regulation got revamped a couple years ago, and it got a lot better. It got more like the construction industry. It was kind of weak, but slips, trips, and falls. Toby, what's your estimate, best guess, or maybe you have actual data on the prevalence of those in the workplace?
slip, trips, and falls. I get reports every day on slip,
What?
trips, and falls. I do. It's crazy. And those reports are extensive. And it's crazy to think how somebody just putting a box on a shelf, but forgetting they had a box behind them that they just had,
okay.
and they step backwards, or they're going to do something and they forgot there's a pallet behind them, and they finish up on that. And each one of these costs a lot of money when they fall. You know, some of them can be super expensive. You know, you were talking about OSHA, things for a second there, and one of the things that I found or find really interesting is, OSHA has like the top 10 things that they cite.
Yeah, every year.
Right. And I think in 2021, the number one thing was fall protection. It was basically general violations. Number 7 on that was fall protection, training requirements, things falling from heights and things like that. And so OSHA really considers a lot of the falling from height type stuff and how you're training for that. But then just recently, I think it was 2017, they put in the walking working surfaces regulations. So not just to fall back on the general duty clause if something wasn't taken care of. They actually say, hey, we got some new requirements. And one of them is that the employer must ensure walking working surfaces are inspected regularly and as necessary and maintained in a safe condition. So that's really important. And some of the stuff that they previously had was kind of like that. It said all places of employment must be kept clean, orderly, and in sanitary condition, and that floors must be clean and to the extent feasibly dry. Okay, so, it's good that they have something in there, but it's really not one of the top 10 cited things, even though it may be one of the top things that's causing your business to pay a whole lot more money in premiums.
Right. And the slips, trips, and falls, I think anybody listening has slipped, tripped, or fell.
Everybody.
I remember getting, now, I hate to put you on the spot, but maybe you could tell me if this would be a claim or not. So I get to work. It's winter. I get out of my truck. I take that first foot on the ground. I go to transfer my weight. I slip, boom, hit my head. Bang up my elbow. I'm just pulling into work.
Claim? Yes.
Yeah. See, what people don't always understand is just because it's not like OSHA couldn't cite you on it necessarily doesn't mean it couldn't be something that your company would have to pay the insurance claim on.
Correct. Yeah, that would be considered a claim. You're coming from or going to work.
Right.
In the parking lot.
Yeah.
But I've also seen where people. Like one of the first claims I had to investigate was, how you go into parking lots sometimes and you see those big divots because in the summer the blacktop gets hot and the front of the car, the engine's in there and it pushes down on those tires and you get these divots, and somebody had fallen in one of these divots. Well, they were basically out to lunch, for work, but it was a work lunch and the person got hurt. So it's like, okay, well, is that my work comp or is that somebody else's problem? Well, ends up being a subrogated type thing, which means it goes to the other company, like the restaurant that they were at, for not taking care of the parking lot. And that's a huge deal, because I mean that was one of these $300,000 claims that could have been theirs if it was in their parking lot that they had the issue. So it's something you need to think about, not only for employees but for the people coming in and out of your business as well.
Let's get some what's in it for me stuff going for maybe a business owner listening. Because what I hear a lot is, well, who cares? That's what I got insurance for.
Right.
So why should a business owner care? They're paying for insurance. Well, isn't that just going to solve all the problems?
Yeah, well, they are paying for insurance, but they're going to pay a lot higher premiums if things if it goes down that road. That's right. You're going to keep paying, and you're going to pay for a long time. I did want to. I know that you guys had done a presentation, or I think Chris Hoke maybe had done something on experience mods a while back, and so I thought I'd just touch on it a little bit and let you know, because I think we got a lot of safety professionals out listening to the podcast. Probably all 2 or 3 of them, right?
Yeah, all two or three.
Okay, so. We just want to make sure
help out those couple people.
That's right. Want to make sure they're in the loop. But so your experience mod, it's based on a few different things. The premium. I mean, I'm trying to say is how the premium is calculated is based on state rate, your payroll, and your experience mod. Now I know you probably don't understand what all that is, but state rate is based on your experience for your type of business, your class of business, and all that, and the losses that are expected per $100 payroll. So. Basically, that kind of information comes from the National Commission on Compensation Insurance.
Is that what that's?
NCCI?
Yeah, I always heard that acronym, but I don't know if I ever heard what it stood for.
Yeah,
Can you say that one more time?
National.
Now you're gonna mess it up.
National Commission on Compensation Insurance.
National Commission on Compensation Insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna remember.
Now that I'm saying it really slow, I'm questioning myself as to if that's even what it means, because
that's
it's
right.
like when your mind's working right.
We'll Google it later.
Anyways, yeah, Google that thing. So, and then the next factor that's involved in premium, and this is just high level, keep in mind, because there's some other smaller factors that go into that, but payroll, it's based on your payroll and your job class codes in your business. So say you have somebody at the front desk, and say you have a welder out there and you have a driver on the road. Well, they all have different exposures, right? Some of the risks are higher for these guys on the road and welders, for what they're doing. And so they'll have a different factor that they'll multiply by the payroll for that many drivers or that many welders or whatever.
Does sound complicated.
It is a bit complicated.
Do you have
That's
why a math formula, like A equals B divided by D?
It has a lot of parentheses and plus and minus, so you have to know that you have to know how those figure in together. But anyways, state rate, payroll, that's a factor. And another thing that, that's something, those first 2 things you can't really do a whole lot about, especially, if you're not the one that's controlling how many people you have working for you and things like that. But the one thing that you can have some effect on is your experience modifier. And we call it EMOD or experience modifier. I think there's a few other different ways to name it. But when talking about the experience mod, that is basically what it is your actual losses of claims losses over a 3-year period divided by the expected losses for a company your size, your type of business, your class of business, and everything else. And so if you have $50,000 of claims that in a year, in a 3-year period, and your type of business has about $50,000 of claims on average, well, then you're at a 1.0 experience mod.
Okay.
So if you have fewer claims, so say you only have 25,000, half of that, right? And 50,000 is what your type of industry out there has, and your size and everything. So you'd have like a 0.5. I don't even know if they go down that far, because there's actually there's a control factor.
Okay, I don't think I've seen one though.
No,
I've
seen them in the 0.6s.
I saw a 0.7 one time, and I was impressed.
Yeah, I think I've seen 0.68. I can't remember much lower than that. But there are some other controls, and that's why I say this kind of high level thing. But they look at a 3-year history of your claims, and so say you have a huge claim from slip and fall right now this year in 2021, and they're calculating your 2022 premium, okay? Well, they're not going to use 2021 because we're not done with 2021 yet. So they'll go back and use 2020, 2019, and 2018. They'll take the costs of your claims in those years and factor that in and see what your experience mod is for the next year. So
is that why it takes so long to get it back down?
Yes, it does take 3 years to get it back down. And so, I mean, you skip a year. So like they said, next year might not be that bad, but the following 3 years are going to be real tough on you. So you always want to get people back as soon as you can. That's why return to work is such a big deal. Get them back. Different states have different time periods where they need to get people back in before it's considered a lost time. Like Iowa's 3 days and Nebraska's 7 days, So in Iowa, you just got to get them back right now because the weekend days cost and everything else. So anyways, I guess, what I'm saying is you can control that experience mod somewhat by having good training, good safety committees, good all these things. And so
that's a good message though. So like I can't control, what'd you call it? The state, what? That's part of the state
rates. Mm-hmm.
I can't control that, right?
Right. No, the state rates. I
can't as a business owner say, hey, state, I don't like this rate.
Nope.
Do something about it.
Nope. Yeah, do something about it. Or I'll get Aaron over here to take care of you.
And the payroll, I mean, I can, I guess, do something about that, but I can't in a way. Like, we got business we got to do, and I need this many people. I already don't have more than I need.
Exactly.
I probably don't have as much as I need.
Right.
So that's kind of out of your control in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing you can control is the losses by being very into safety.
Right.
And so when someone complains about premiums and stuff or can't get a job at this plant because my EMR is so high, well, there's some things we can do. It's not just all out of our hands and it's just all everybody else. There's stuff we can do. And what I hear you saying too is controlling the slips, trips, and falls is going to be a big part of that.
Yep.
And that reminds me of the first time I ever met you. I don't know if you remember, but this is going back over 5 years ago for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We were both called into a place to do some training. And you were training right before I was. So you were coming out of the room. I was going in to get set up. And I was like, who are you? What are you doing here? And you were like, oh, slips, trips, and falls. And you had a mascot with you.
Oh, yeah.
It was at a hospital.
Okay, yep.
And you guys, I don't know if you still have that program.
We do still have that program. We have a big old penguin mascot that we go around with, and it is fun. I tell you what, when we go into a lot of our schools, the elementary schools and stuff, those kids love it. And I do have one short story on that one where the school nurse decided to be the person that go out to the lunchroom with me where they had maybe, 500 students. They had a lot of students. It was amazing. Anyway, so all the teachers were there, all the kids were there. Nurse comes out with me, and I can't see through this mascot outfit very well, but I'm this huge...
You were wearing it.
Yeah, I'm this huge penguin.
Oh, wow.
Okay, right? And so right in the middle of what we were doing, someone got injured, whether it was maybe a Band-Aid or whatnot, but somebody got injured, and the nurse got called away.
Okay.
So here I am standing in a mascot outfit. And as the nurse left, I guess all the kids just thought, well, this must be a free-for-all. I can go up and give them a big old hug. So I had a massive 20-foot circle around me of kids just right on me. I'm like, okay, I'm a penguin. I need help.
And for those who've never been in one of those, it's intense.
Yes, very hot.
So embarrassing myself in college, there was I got a job suiting up as Barney.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they paid really well. Like I'm a college kid. They're like, we'll give you $50. You put on this outfit and go to this pizza place, And so I was like, yeah, $50. Well, man, that thing was so hot. I couldn't see. And every time a kid stepped on my tail, the zipper went down. It was like...
That's gotta hurt.
It was a tough experience. Not my zipper on my pants, but the zipper of the costume. And... hats off to you for taking one for the team there, because that's not easy. But when I was asking you about your program you were doing there,
mm-hmm.
and you what's the deal with the penguin? And you're saying, well, walk like a penguin. And I was like, waddle, and you're like, no, you shuffle.
Yep, small steps.
And I'm, to be honest with you, I was like, whatever, how's this, is this revolutionary information? Probably not. But it was. I actually tried it,
mm-hmm.
The next time I had the opportunity when I'm walking on kind of a sketchy, icy situation, I'm thinking Toby. And I'm like,
'Tis the season.
All right, I hope nobody's looking at me because I'm going to walk like a penguin. And so I started shuffling my feet back and forth, and I tell you what, I never felt more sure of my footing on ice before.
Yep. It really helps. You keep your arms out, your head's up. You don't carry a whole bunch of stuff with you. You shuffle your feet. It's really small steps as you're going, and you'll probably get there a lot safer than you would, any other way. I know I did do one at I think it was the National Safety Council out in Des Moines. They had a simulator, and that was a very interesting thing because it was they put you on the slickest surface they can get. I mean, they water it down and everything, so it's just as smooth, slick ice as you can get. And it's kind of like a treadmill, but you have to try to walk across this thing. It's just slippery ice. It's not moving, but that's the good part. But the fact is, you're trying to maintain not falling across it. Now, if you do the penguin and you do it right and you're standing straight up, all's well. When you start waddling way to the sides, you're obviously feet gonna slip out.
Wow.
So you have to think about that. But what they were really focusing on also was to do a kind of like a high step marching, where you pick up your feet straight up and down instead of trying to walk out and landing on your heels, a whole bunch, because that's where the falls happen a lot of times. So when you're doing just a regular old walk, that's what happens. You go off your one toe, and when your other heel gets on the ground, that's when the slip happens and people fall backwards. So they have, that was one of the cool things I learned. You can also do that. So we got, the penguin thing or the marching, as long as you're just keeping your head up and marching with the higher knees and stuff like that to get across it, you can really make it across without falling. And they put fall protection on us to do it, which was very interesting.
Well, yeah, because if you're going to hit the ground. Yeah. I always joke with my students when we're getting ready to do something like CPR. I have a standing joke. Let's stretch out first. We got to do 5 cycles. That's a lot of compressions, like 150 compressions. It's actually a workout. I'm like, let's stretch out. I haven't had an injury yet in a safety class, and I don't want to start. Like, how'd you get hurt? Safety training. Like, it doesn't seem right. So I'm glad they put them in harness because that seems like a chance to get hurt there. I have heard in town of a story where a lady slipped on the floor in a workplace and died. So
I have heard of things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't fortunately had any of my policyholders that happened to, but
and I didn't have to work the case. I just heard about it.
Right.
And it makes sense. And I tell people that story when I'm doing fall protection because they're like, "Oh, it's only 4 feet off the ground." I was like, "Let me tell you a story about this lady here in this town. She died 0 feet off the ground."
Yep. It doesn't take much. Even just a step up the ladder or two and you fall because the thing isn't secured right or whatever, and stuff like that happens. So we do see a lot of claims on falls, and the focus of what I'm talking today is mainly just walking down the street, walking in your work, just basic stuff. You don't even have to get into the fall protection and all the crazy stuff, just basic
walking.
Anybody,
because the amount of people and everybody listening, I'm telling you, I have slipped, tripped, or fallen. I've worked some cases where they cut the straps off a pallet, and they're supposed to pick those straps up, but they didn't.
Yep.
And then people tripping on those.
Yeah, or even paper on tile or whatever.
Okay.
I stepped on something the other day where it was just a piece of paper laying on the tile, and I didn't see it. Right. And then after I slipped, I'm like, why did I slip? And I look back, and there's this paper, so I picked that up, put it up. But,
there you go.
It's just the little things like that make all the difference,
I was in a plant the other day, and they had what's the name of that metal? It's like got the diamond pattern on the metal.
Diamond plate. Mm-hmm.
And, so it's not smooth.
Right.
There's
some bumps
it's
in
raised areas for non-slip.
Right.
But it was like I was on ice.
Was it wet?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll do her.
And I'm going upstairs. It's multi-layer mezzanines, big machines, food manufacturing plant. And I'm like telling the guys, like, could slip any second. Like, this is really slippery. They're like, yeah, we know. And then so they're like brainstorming. They're like, I tried to get them to approve for us to paint it with this surface. But then the food quality guy goes, no, you can't put that surface on there. This is, food safety and people safety sometimes clash, just like safety and production clash. People
Yeah.
don't realize the food safety, people safety clashes that happen.
Yep, there's a lot of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. You know, one's going to help out employees not slip, but the other could be a different type of claim if there's some type of contaminant in a food.
Right.
That's not good either.
Yeah.
So finding, sometimes it's difficult enough to find the people safety solution, and anytime I got to find a people safety solution that's in line with GMP, general manufacturing practice, or food safety, I was like, oh man, we got a head scratcher.
This is going to get tough.
It's not going to be an easy one.
Yep.
I ran into that with knives, with box cutters.
Okay.
There's a ton of safe ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we can't use any of those. Why not? The tips could break off.
And get in the food.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, so now I got to find a food safe one that has those other safety features. And at the time I couldn't.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles to some of
Food
these stuff,
safety strikes again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make the situation worse by doing something else,
I was called by an insurance person one time before I got the job here. And they said, we don't have a safety guy in that area. Can you go do the safety audit on this company? We want to see if they would be safe enough to write. And I was like, yeah, no problem. I do safety audits all the time. I'm really familiar with the OSHA regs. And they go, what? OSHA? They go, we could care less about OSHA. And I was like, what?
Yep.
They're like, why don't
Do
you
it
use our
right.
inspection form? And it was just like another world open to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just battling to get people compliant with OSHA.
Right.
And these people are like, we're just trying not to have claims. And it's two different worlds that do overlap, but they're different.
Right.
Things that aren't OSHA violations are a serious hazard and claim potential.
Yes. I ran into that a while back when I was working with a prior company before insurance. And, the understanding that there's a comp side of this as well as the OSHA side. They looked at me as the safety manager, safety director, and said, hey, we got to keep these OSHA injuries down. And when we did, it's like, wow, we're doing a really good job. And I'm like, well, you know what? We kind of aren't, because if you look at our work comp claims, and they're like, well, yeah, but, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like, well, no, not really, because there's a lot of, and it was a good transition to insurance for me, really, because, I understood the safety side, so I go through and I do walkthroughs at places and everything else, but I also understand that the major loss sources of slip, trip, falls, and lifting, pushing, pulling, that type of stuff, are huge, and those ones are the ones that are costing your business a whole lot of money.
You should come back and we should do that one. Ergonomics, push, pull, force, all that stuff. That'd be a whole nother
That's
hour.
all good stuff,
Why'd you choose this topic over that topic? Is this one worse for claims?
I've seen, I think you've done a couple on ergonomics before, so I kind of stayed away from it. I mean, you guys have done 50-something, things you probably don't even remember,
We don't always cover them from the same angles, though.
That's true.
From that claim angle.
Right,
right. We're covering it from a different angle.
And I'm not, a good statistics guy where I can remember all that stuff in my head about the numbers and all that kind of stuff, so I usually write that kind of stuff down. But anyways, yeah. But, I was going to tell you one thing on like Liberty Mutual. They're a company out there that has a lot of good statistics out there. They get with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and they compile a bunch of
funny commercial people.
Yeah,
Liberty.
Limu or something. They're funny.
Oh, it's those guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lee, Moon, Liberty, Mutual.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Took me a while, but anyways, yeah. So I just wanted to point out, like in 2019, this is one of those that I have written down. So Liberty Mutual Workplace Safety Index is what they have, and the top 10 most frequent workplace injuries. You probably couldn't guess which one of those are. What do you think the top one was?
I'm going to go with slips, trips, and falls.
Okay, well you're wrong. No,
oh, really?
That's number 2. But yeah, that overexertion involving outside sources is the number one, and they say 24% of injuries and $13 billion was spent in 2019 due to that.
How many billion?
$13 billion, and 24% of the claims that came in were all based on that. So a quarter of the injuries are overexertion of some sort.
Now, whose money is that $13 billion?
That would be both the companies and not the companies, because it's direct costs, and then you also have indirect costs. So there's a whole lot more on top of that you're not seeing.
Let me ask you something about claims. Does it work at all like my health insurance? Like, will pay this much after I pay this much? Or is there like a chunk that the employer pays, or is the work comp carrier paying the whole thing? Or is it different depending on your policy?
It depends. Some companies like to pay for their own and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
When,
But like
when
a
something
big
injures
claim.
a smaller, but bigger claims, yeah, work comp handles it. That's part of the deal with the work comp.
So I don't have to pay a deductible.
There are deductible plans.
Okay, so yeah, it's
Right.
kind of, yeah. I
Yeah,
just wondered if they had any skin in the game, like if they're paying anything on that, or
Yeah, well, the skin in the game portion is the years after that the premium's going to be
Yeah,
way
yeah,
up. So,
yeah.
and a lot of companies, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I mean, and there's companies out there that I go to that just don't even know that that's a thing, that it could affect them for 3 years and how much it could affect and getting people back to work, Had somebody in Iowa, I think, and you have to get it back within 3 days or it's considered lost time and it affects your premium even more. And they're like, oh, yeah, our policy says, if they can report 3 or 4 days, we're good. And it's like, no, you should have them report right away because you only have 3 days till it turns into a lost time claim, and it's going to cost you a whole lot more. So, but you were talking about thinking slip, trips, and falls, maybe the first one as far as Liberty Mutual had, but that is number 2. Falls on same level as number 2 in the most frequent workplace injuries that Liberty Mutual has figured up. And they say 19% of injuries that are out there are due to falls on the same level, okay, not from heights, and $10 billion. So in those top 2 categories, you're looking at $40 billion, and 40% of the injuries are just overexertion and slip and falls on same level.
So if I had a client say, Aaron, save me money on employee injuries.
Boom.
That's all I want you to do. And I said, okay, we're going to implement a robust ergonomic program and a robust walking, working surface, slip, trips, and falls program. And we did it, and we implemented it. From what that data suggests, that would be the most bang for your buck on reducing their money spent.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you don't want to ignore those top priority things where people are working at heights and all those kind of things, and
vehicle
lockout, tag out,
and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things and a lot of factors. A lot of companies have some really big hazards. I went to one the other day that had a big chemical vat, and you could stand there and put your hand on it because they removed the wall behind it and were building out on that building.
Okay.
And so you could just walk right up and put your hand on the side of this acid tank, And I'm like, you might want to put a barrier, So there's bigger things that you need to think about too. But for as far as what normally happens, typically average, these 2 things are the biggest.
So
things.
You said they had a top 10 list?
Yeah, they do. They have a top 10 list.
Let's do something fun.
Yep.
I'll do OSHA for 2021 fiscal year, and you do Liberty Mutual's top 10.
Oh, I don't know their top 10. I just know a couple. I do know
what is that?
I know a couple of them that are number 4 and number 7 that I could tell you about from Liberty Mutual.
All right, well, let's compare with what we got. Number 1 for OSHA was fall protection general requirements. And number 1 for Liberty Mutual is the force.
Overexertion involving outside sources. Correct.
Number 2 most frequently cited standards for OSHA was respiratory protection.
Correct. And number 2, Liberty Mutual, most frequent things was falls on same levels.
So if I'm going off OSHA's top 10 going, this is the list that's going to make employees safe, not necessarily. It's the list that's going to make you less likely to get busted.
Right.
I think that's fair to say.
But at the same time, you have people with paint booths with no respiratory programs, so they might not know it today that they're going to have a big issue, but they'll know it 20 years down the road.
It's all hazards when you're non-compliant.
Yeah, that's the tough part when comparing them. But I do know, like on the Liberty Mutual one, number 4 was falls to lower level. Okay, so
number 4 on OSHA is scaffolding.
Yeah,
that's
so
similar.
Yeah, and we already talked about fall protection and scaffolding up in 1 through 4. So those, yeah, and then number 7 on Liberty Mutuals was slip or trip without a fall. Go figure that one out. $2.2 billion just because somebody almost fell and strained themselves.
I see that a lot. They catch themselves, but they tweak their back doing it.
Right.
They might as well just fell. They might have not got hurt as bad.
They say that, like, if your foot moves a quarter of an inch, your body kind of corrects it. You don't even notice, like you're on ice and you move it, it moves about a quarter of an inch. You probably won't even notice it. Your body will just adjust, okay? And then when you go from like a quarter inch to 4 inches, that's when people like try to catch themselves and they really get these bad strains and all that stuff. And then when it gets past 4 inches of a slip, you're down. You know what I'm saying? So
I get to teach that every Monday and Thursday night.
Oh, yeah? What do you do where you teach that?
Muay Thai kickboxing.
Kickboxing. Awesome.
We do a lot of off-balancing. We tried to kick your foot out to that drastic of an extension, like you were just saying, because then the instinct goes to catch themselves, their hands drop, and now we kick them in the head or punch them in the face.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's funny how we're doing that, and those statistics echo that. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Read that again, will you? On the how many feet or inches or what
yeah.
are you saying?
So like a half, if your foot moves about a half an inch, you don't even notice it really, and then if it's from a half inch to 4 inches, you notice it because you're trying to catch yourself, and you do a lot of times catch yourself, and that's great, except for when you get those bad strains in your muscles, right? And then, you go out past 4 inches, if it's a slip past that with your feet, you're gone. You're most likely just going to land on your butt or something.
So all my kickboxing students, when you kick that foot out, it's got to go minimum of 4 to have the effect that we want.
That's exactly right. You kick with this much force. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
pretty funny.
You're right. It's a couple other statistics I got from our company, SFM, since we're in work comp, and we do a lot of gathering of statistics. So I don't have a lot of the year-round statistics, but I did jot down some of the winter stuff, that 25% of ice and snow-related falls at work occur in parking lots.
That makes sense to me.
That does make sense. A lot of people don't think about it. They're just thinking inside a lot of times. And when they get inside, sometimes you do slip when you step off the mat, inside because there's a wet floor or whatever. But 25% happen out there. And then 20% of those falls end up as lost time.
So I'm a weird guy because I'm a safety guy.
Yeah.
You're
evil too.
I'm evil. I look at everything like that. Mm-hmm. So I went to this facility the other day, and I'm driving up, and I go, oh, man. Their front door was north facing. Mm-hmm. And the north side of the buildings, they block the sun.
Shadow, yeah.
And so you could have snow melt on all 3 sides of the building, but it's still on the north side.
Always.
And that's the employee entrance.
And they probably had a drain coming down right by that.
Yeah, just right there, just floating out, freezing. And so, a normal person, go, oh, what's the matter, Aaron? Why'd you sigh? The door's on the north side. They're just like, you're a weirdo. Right. Why do you care what side the door's on? Well, this is going to be an increase, slip, trip, and fall. Here's where everybody's parking. The snow and the ice is going to be way worse here.
Yep.
And I don't know of any, sometimes you don't have a choice, but I don't know of any architects and planning for slips, trips, and falls. They're not safety people. They're not planning for that. But
yeah, I see that. Sometimes, even in the newer buildings, and you see they put at a new school, and they have the drain pipe going right over the sidewalk, where you have to come in from the entrance where the wheelchair ramp is. And it's no. Guys, you have to get skis on those things or something. Yeah.
I've worked some issues, some claims where it was from gutters. Mm-hmm. The gutters pouring out on the main entrance, in and out. And this time of year especially, right now it's a perfect time of year.
Yep.
We're having, I don't know if it's unseasonable, but we're having some decent weather. But boy, when that sun goes down, it's like a drastic change.
Definitely.
So it's all liquid, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden 2 seconds later it's ice, and here comes second shift getting off, or third shift coming on, and slips. It's like a ice skating rink out there.
Yeah, it's a really bad deal. And SFM tries to help our policyholders. Sometimes there's some grants and different things that they do to try to get, to put in programs to help them with their winter slip, trip, fall efforts, But
'cause if I was doing an OSHA audit and I saw a gutter pouring out on a main thoroughfare, there's not a direct OSHA reg that I could say, you're violating 1910 dot blah, 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 C52. It says here that those gutters shall not pour, it's not an OSHA violation. They got a roundabout violation on it if there's injuries, the general duty clause you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But then when I look at it from just a claim perspective and an injury prevention, I'm like, we got to change that.
Why would you not want to?
Now, do you run into this where you see that? You go, oh, claims. This is not good for you. This is not safe. And then the client goes, show me the OSHA reg.
I have had that on different situations, and usually it's not that way with slip and fall stuff. It's usually like, well, they're not going to put the money into fixing that or something like that.
Right.
And then you're like, yeah, they really need to start thinking about it, putting it in the budget for next year or the year, just, you can't just ignore this stuff because it'll catch up to you.
Yeah, because some people, I've been called a lot when I say, oh, that's a violation. Some people said, show me.
Yeah.
And so if it's an OSHA violation, I can't. But if it's just it's not even best practice, but if it's claim prevention, if it's loss prevention, if it's injury prevention, I don't have a reg I could go to.
I have had that with racking, pallet racking, where, I'm like, well, you should secure this to the floor or the wall or the roof or something so that it doesn't tip if they pick the pallet up too high and it catches on the lip and then the whole thing comes down, and all these engines or whatever else you have falls on you. Because I've seen stuff like that happen before, so I know that this stuff does happen. And the person that I was talking to at this one place was like, show me where I have to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, does it matter where the regulation is if that thing falls on you? But some people are just set in their ways. And I'm like, whatever, you can't convince on some people, but.
Yeah, I was doing a walkthrough with a carrier safety person, and I was learning like, wow, they don't need a reg,
Yep.
And it was at a grocery store. That had like a gas station component to it where you could go get your big gulp, you can go get your 42-ounce pop, and
they still make those?
Yeah, I think so. They're not legal in Iowa. I think
they
tried that
in New York or something.
The East Coast. but they said you got to put a rug under that soda fountain, whatever those machines are called.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like, where's that at? And they're like, well, it's not a regulation, but here's what's going to happen. You're going to have kids do it. They're going to spill all over the place. You got that tile floor. You're going to have a customer get injured and slip. That's going to be a claim on you.
Yep.
That's going to affect you. But if you just go put a rug there, like a $20 mat.
Wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it because the spills is going to hit that. It's going to be absorbent. Now, that's going to be gross. You're going to want to clean that and change that out every now and then. But you're literally talking about avoiding a serious claim.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And then making sure you don't get an excessively big mat.
Okay,
I've had some places.
right.
I have had some places that actually, have older aging workforce.
Okay.
Trying to lift a mat in the kitchen because it's a huge mat.
Yes.
And by themselves and everything, and then ended up with a large claim. So it's like
Ergo
you kind of have to think about it, right?
Yeah,
and they do have things called pig mats, which are
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard of the PIGG. I
Yeah,
think it is. You roll those things out. You can cut off how much you need at this time, and some places love those things, and they do a great job. And you can use them in food service and everything else,
Nice.
healthcare and all that.
I work with that brand a lot on the chemical spill arena.
Okay.
Because they
have a lot of that.
It's
stuff.
a brand, but they call certain socks, absorbent socks. They just call them pigs.
Spill kit
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. You got this customized, cut off what you need, roll out mats.
Yeah.
That don't just slide. Because I've seen mats where they're like a magic carpet. You stand on the mat and it slides. Like you got to match your mat to your floor surface too.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about just rug trips?
Floor mats, rugs, all kinds of stuff. Sometimes you see the buckles in the rug. I remember going to one location, a nursing home, and they had so many buckles in the carpet.
Ooh, that's bad at a nursing home.
At a nursing home, it's bad just anywhere, but in a nursing home when you're trying to get around with walkers and this and that and the other, there is just a lot of hazards, and at the time they just, didn't want to put the money into it. So it's like, well, okay. So
what was did the carpet go bad to where it wouldn't lay flat?
Yes.
Okay.
It must not have been laid properly a long time ago, but this was like 70s carpet or whatever, and you're thinking, okay, I probably need to do an upgrade. I'm small towns, and you see different things sometimes, but this one was just excessive, and so yeah, we do see that. But with floor mats themselves, when you get non-beveled edges on floor mats, that's a big deal. You come up on them and you kick them, and it becomes more of a hazard than just having a beveled rug or carpet or mat or whatever.
You gave me an idea for a new podcast.
Really?
Yeah. So on the OSHA side of stuff, we're the evil safety dudes because we're like, hey, put on your harness. We're enforcing OSHA rules. company safety rules. But we need to have an insurance loss prevention one called Crazy Safety Dudes.
Crazy Safety Dudes. Yeah.
Because I could just put myself in this nursing home administrator role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing my job. I'm making sure our accreditations and our patient care and blah, blah, blah. And then here comes this guy. And he's like, I'm a safety guy. Get new carpet. And like, are you a safety guy or interior design? Do you not think the carpet goes with the wall? Like, I don't expect a safety guy to tell me to redo my carpet. And they might think, this is a crazy guy. What's this guy doing walking around telling me to get new carpet? But it's completely a safety thing.
It is.
It's a claim thing. It's a financial health thing. But I can imagine, and I'll just ask you, has anybody looked at you crazy when you say get new carpet?
Most of the time it's because people above them are like, yeah, right, like I'm never going to get money to do this from anybody, above me, But then you got to wonder, how does this work here, How do you get anything done, know, if you can't get the basics done here, you know? But that was an exception. You don't see that every day, but when you do see it, it just stands out,
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've almost tripped on carpet and mats.
Oh, yeah.
And
floor mats especially, like when you're walking into a building or something and you have it, and how many times have people have you yourself just fix the mat yourself? I do that all the time.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a stickler about it. If I don't care if I'm a patron at a gas station or a restaurant, if I see a floor mat buckled up or whatever, I go fix it.
Yep.
Because I'm saving someone's life.
But you're an evil safety dude. You can't be saving somebody's life.
And that seems extreme, but we just talked about deaths from falling. What did you call it? Falling from the same level?
Falling from the same level. Yeah, on the same level.
But even if you say that's too statistically improbable to use, well, fine. We're saving someone a broken limb. I mean, what do you see from injuries from these slips, trips, and falls?
The wide variety of things. A lot of fractures. I think one of the things 62%, SFM says 62% of slips and falls in the wintertime end up in contusions, bruises, and fractures.
Okay, I can handle a contusion or a bruise,
right?
But I don't want a fracture.
I do not want a fracture, and I also don't want sprains and strains. I might be able to handle it a little bit, but I can tell you what, when I was, and not related to slip and falls, but when I was playing a batting cage with my boy the other day, and I swung so hard and pulled a muscle in my side, I couldn't sneeze for 3 weeks. All right, so I mean, literally had to stop myself from sneezing for 3 weeks because that hurt so bad. And the same type of stuff can happen when you're slipping and falling and trying to catch yourself, So
fractures, bruises, contusions.
Yep, and strains
and it's just going back to the OSHA world. That's going to be a recordable. I mean, if someone's got a fracture, the doctor may cast it depending on where it's at. They're probably going to prescribe light duty.
Beyond first aid.
It's going to go on your log.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, that throwing off EMR rate's bad. Throwing off your total recordable incident rate's bad, too. There's a lot of these numbers that go into your financial business health when people ask for them. Right. And if the number's out of whack and they don't want you to work for them, or
you're a contractor and you're not going to get the business.
Yeah, you have your TRIR is too high for us. Really?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, people look at that stuff anymore.
Right.
They don't. If you're having that many injuries, EMR has become the gold standard.
Yeah. And something that plays into that, you got to remember also is, say somebody gets in a large vehicle accident, in a vehicle accident, and it's not their fault, and you're an employee, and it's not even your fault. It was the other guy, and some of these things can be subrogated, which means it can be put on to the other person, that's responsible for causing it and all that stuff. But that doesn't happen until all the claims dollars are in, all the medical bills, everything's closed out, and that may be years and years down the road. And so your experience mod is going to be high. And if maybe, when you're trying to get into some of these companies, they might be able to justify it if they show why and all that stuff. But that can be kind of tricky when people say, oh, what's your experience mod? Well, it's this, but there's a reason, So it's not always because of bad culture and a whole bunch of things wrong and everything else, So I've kind of seen it both ways, but yeah.
Let's talk for a moment about just liability. So let's just go away from employees.
Okay.
So I have a business where customers come in, clients come in, and I have an environment conducive to a slip, trip, and fall, and I have a non-employee fall.
Yep.
Is that okay because it was an employee? Am I off?
Good. You are out of my scope, I tell you, because I'm work comp employees only. But I do know just from my own what I think is common sense. I know there's no such thing as common sense.
Yeah.
But
not anymore.
My perception is that there's a lot of liabilities. Even if it's just going to court to try to prove that you're not liable, you're going to be liable for something.
Yeah, and you could sue anybody for anything. So
exactly,
if you got hurt somewhere else, it's not good.
Right.
It's not a great thing.
Yeah. And you just reminded me about something else as when you're, walking into facilities, whether it's raining outside, whether it's a seasonal snow and ice, where there's snow and ice on the ground, or maybe you're in the middle of summer and there's not a whole lot of water outside, but there's different seasons for different lengths of mats, and people probably don't even think of that a lot of times.
Okay.
And I go into a lot of places and I'm like, man, you probably should get a longer mat so people have time to get the stuff off their feet.
That makes sense.
They say, I think it's like 8 to 12 steps. If it's a snowy day, you want to be able to have the person take 8 to 12 steps, which is about 30 feet of mat, so that you can get your feet cleaned off before you get off the end of it. And then when it's just raining, it can be up to 6 to 8 steps or something like that. And then less than that, it's about 3 or 4 steps.
Wow.
You need to be able to normally have 3 or 4 steps. So sometimes when you walk into places and you see a little 1 foot mat or 2 foot mat, you're like, wow, I have to stand here in one place and try to get everything off my feet, and not good for the season,
Yeah, nobody really thinks about that. I mean,
there's
obviously some people do, but the length of your mat, depending on the type of precipitation and how that's a safety issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an OSHA reg.
No, and
I've been teaching OSHA a long time, and I've never heard, thou shalt have a 30-foot mat from this season to this season if you're in this regions or any region where there could be snow.
Yeah, you just need to be thinking about these things, because that's those tiles they're walking off onto after that is a big deal, And another thing that I see when I go into a lot of places is where they have maybe 3 or 4 mats inside the front door.
Okay.
And you have a lot more potential for the mats overlapping and people tripping on them, or something, the mats having ruined edges or whatever on the sides of them or something like that. When you have 4 mats, there's a lot more potential there. When you have one big mat, you are in there because people aren't tripping over stuff, and you're not having to worry about so much stuff. So when you have, vendors that bring in mats, things to consider: lengths of your mat, how many mats, basic things that a lot of people don't think about.
Can you count on them on being the mat experts for safety?
You would think so.
Or they're just selling mats?
Yeah, you would think you could, but I've been into enough places to know that that's not the case. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier beveled edge.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
Beveled just means it's at an angle. You don't want straight up edges on the sides of your mats. You know how sometimes you go in kitchens and you see those thick mats?
Yes.
And they have straight edges up and down on the sides of them, and you can just, they say when you have like a 1/4 inch or more of a gap, that there's a trip potential. So when you're walking down, you've probably seen people walking in the parking lots or whatever else, and they trip, and you're like, well, that was funny, but what did they trip on? I don't even see anything.
Yeah.
Well, it probably was a 1/4 inch or more thing back there that their toe got caught on and they fell forward.
That actually is a regulation in stairs.
Okay. Yep.
When you build stairs, you got to be like between 30 and 50 degrees of angle, and they can't be more than a 1/4 inch variation between stair.
Okay.
Because it's like we're creatures of habit, we're just used to lifting that leg, and then just a
something
1/4
changes.
Boom, and then teeth into the stair.
Yeah, exactly.
Or boom, 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 down.
Right.
Falling down's worse, but falling up's bad too on a stair.
Yeah. Those concrete, when I go to a lot of places and the concrete's broken out front or on the sidewalks or in the parking lots.
Right.
And you kind of feel bad because you're like, well, I don't want to make a big capital expense for you, guy, but you really got to do something, because if you don't, you're going to have a really big expense anyway, and it's going to last for years.
And that's what I try to communicate. All right, what I'm asking you to do, I understand that costs money, right? But the average claim or the average OSHA fine on this is actually more.
Right.
So you're actually going to save money through prevention.
Exactly.
But communicating that is very difficult, because I can't tell you how many business owners said, well, it hasn't happened so far. You safety guys, you're just always thinking worst case, and and it's like, well, I mean, Look at the stats. You have the potential there.
Exactly. And you bring me back to something else I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier when we were talking about, how you figure out the experience model and all that stuff.
Okay.
But there are direct costs and there's indirect costs to injuries. And,
right.
And people a lot of times look at the direct costs. Okay, there's medical and there's compensation costs that you have to pay, right? So you've got those things on the surface. Everybody sees those. But a lot of the indirect costs that you don't see, okay, when somebody just fell, somebody has to fill out that paperwork. Okay, somebody has to do the accident investigation. Somebody's got to figure out what's going on, and then somebody's got to follow up with the claim. So all this stuff takes time and effort out of people's time that they could be doing something productive, but now they can't because of that. So you do lose productivity. Maybe you're missing that guy on the floor now that's supposed to be out there working on the floor, but they had that fall injury now that they can't even come to work because they have a broken leg or whatever else it is. There's overtime costs that you have to think about. Somebody else has to do overtime now because you're not here. They got to put in more hours possibly. It just depends on how big the company is and how many extras you have, which nobody really has these days. Nobody has extra employees. So, and then you get a decrease in morale. That's a big one, you know, as far as an indirect cost that you don't really think about. But when you have low morale, you're going to have lower productivity. You're going to have a lot of other things going on. And then, you're affecting that person's family, not just you're affecting them and their family. And if they're getting paid less than their normal wages because they're getting just work comp, which may just be, 67% or something for them, they're not going to get their whole paycheck. It's affecting their family, and then their increased work comp premiums. So that's just, we talk a lot about the money side of it here, but really it's about that person. They say going home safe and all that. You hear that every day, but it's true. I mean, it's like if
it's both.
That's a bigger thing.
It affects a person and affects a business. And those indirect costs, sometimes I hear them called hidden costs.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time communicating those, you know, but sometimes I get through, because someone that's all about man hours and production, and they can understand some of those. Like one of the ones I was working with was, all right, so that guy's hurt and he's out. You mentioned overtime. But what if it wasn't? What if he's going to be out so long, they're actually going to bring in somebody from another department? Well, is that guy that they're bringing in good at that job?
And more of a safety hazard because he doesn't know all the stuff yet?
Yeah, for sure. So we got more of a risk for injury, but then on the pure production level, there's that learning curve. So that guy's not producing as much as the other guy.
Definitely.
And, that's a hidden cost. Like production goes down because you pull in some guy who's not good at that job.
Yep.
And, so sometimes they can start getting that. And then sometimes it's a hire thing. Well, we actually, this guy's going to be out for 3 months and we got to hire someone. Do you know how much it costs to put somebody through orientation?
Yeah.
HR's got to get with them. Safety's got to get with them. Quality's got to get with them. We got to issue them PPE. We got to put them through courses. Maybe we have them buddy with someone for a week. That it's like wow.
A lot of
when
resources.
you start doing the math and trying to it's not fun to calculate it. All those nuances, but if you did, we're talking like the claim was $80,000, but the total cost was this much, and they're like, no way, I do not believe you. I mean, I've had people not believe me, and it's like, all right, here's the math. That orientation, cost this much, and that PPE, you gave them that harness, that hard hat, that cost this. It's like, wow. And then when I love it, it's rare, but it's a really cool moment for me when a business owner or somebody responsible for safety gets that, just the financial piece of it. When they're like, whoa, not being as safe as we could is costing us a ton of money. Getting to the level we could save a ton of money.
Right.
And getting them to be proactive and buy in. When those light bulbs click on, I'm like, I did something good today.
Yes.
And
you can help them start guiding them towards having a better safety culture, that's just the way to go.
Yeah, I just love those aha moments. Like, because they're always looking, you know how I was like, oh, cool, I got an insurance guy. He could tell me claim numbers. Well, like some of these production managers, they got all these money dollars too. Like, all right, that line was down for this much. We just lost this much money because they let all that pile up over there. That's waste. That cost us this much. Like they got those costs. And so when you start saying, yeah, you pull this guy over here to replace the injured guy, and now you're only producing this much and this much. They're already putting those numbers together.
Yep.
And when it just clicks for them, it's like, cool. I think I just made a safety advocate, a safety-friendly person.
Yes. Yeah.
Finally, this production manager used to fight me because safety slowed them down and hit their bottom line. But now they got the whole picture.
And then safety training is a good thing, and all
Yeah,
these other things that they
yeah.
were trying to put off because they wanted the people on the floor. It's like, it's going to hit you someday.
Now they're realizing they could produce more
Right.
for being safe.
Exactly.
Have you ever heard the story? I think it was a Gold Gate Bridge story.
What's
It's
that
kind
now?
of told in safety sometimes how, and I'll probably mess it up. Everybody should go research it. But the guy was kind of ingenuitive, and he put a fall protection net under it. And it wasn't standard. It was barely ever done. And it cost money and time to put this net up. But they actually finished ahead of schedule and under budget, because they took the time and the money to do this safety thing, because now the workers could work more free and faster without that fear of death.
Oh, yeah.
The Golden Gate Bridge.
Interesting.
You
Yeah,
fall off that
yeah.
thing, you're done.
That's interesting.
So because they invested in safety, they saved a ton of money.
I'll be darned. Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah, we need a current one, though, because that's like,
Yeah,
well, that was
that's
back
a 49
in.
or whatever. I don't know how long ago that was, but.
Well, Mr. Toby, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Believe it or not, it's already been an hour.
Wow, that is incredible.
And I'll say the joke I say to everybody. It went fast to us, but the listeners, they were probably like, man, are these guys not talking? But
Yep, I appreciate you having me here.
yeah, man, and you did great. And I know that we may have done a topic before, but we love your angle on it, because there's so many angles to a topic, and each angle hits someone different. So you're welcome back anytime. But for Mr. Toby Tortorilla.
Nice job.
All right, cool. I'm getting there. I'm Aaron Icino. Together today we are the Evil Safety Dudes. All right, until next time, everybody, stay safe.